Welcome back, everyone, to the Halls of History. I am your host, Scott Hall. It is almost time for the Super Bowl, and I hope you all are excited for this. I always am, no matter who happens to get into the game. Now, no, I am not wearing this green as a way of supporting the Eagles. In case you can't see it, nice little M there with the herd across it. But it is the start of softball season as well, and the herd is on the road down in Florida. So I had to wear my green for that today. Not for the Eagles. But before getting to today's topic, I first want to say congratulations to the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2023. A great group of 9 with modern era inductees of Rondé Barber, Darrelle Revis, Zach Thomas, Joe Thomas, and DeMarcus Ware. You have senior committee inductees Chuck Howley, Joe Klecko, and Ken Riley. And last, but certainly not least, head coach Don Coryell. It has been a long time waiting for Coryell to finally find his rightful place in the Hall of Fame. But discussions of Hall of Famers and those still waiting, well, that could be a whole other thing that could really go all day. So now on to today's topic. And my question for you at the end of last week's video: which franchise holds the record for the most points scored in a conference championship game? The answer? The Buffalo Bills on January 20th, 1991, in a blowout over the Los Angeles Raiders 51-3. As an 8-year-old kid, I do actually remember watching this game. Well, maybe not that much of it. After the first quarter, I grabbed my football and went in the backyard to run around and play my own game. I was every player on both teams, even the announcers, and sometimes the crowd. But I had a blast, and I could be out there for hours. But I remember, as I'm running around out there in the backyard, my dad kept coming outside and saying, "Guess what? Buffalo scored again. Hey, surprise, surprise. The Bills just scored again. And hey, you won't believe this, but Buffalo just scored again." There was a definite theme developing here. The Buffalo Bills had been on the rise in recent seasons. After recording double-digit wins and losing in the divisional round back-to-back years in 1980 and 1981, the Bills went through some lean years, including 3 straight seasons of 12 or more losses from 1984 through 1986. Now, head coach Marv Levy, he did have the franchise beginning to roll in the right direction, and the Bills went 12-4 and won the AFC East in 1988, but unfortunately lost to the Cincinnati Bengals in the conference championship. Buffalo went 9-7 in 1989, won the East again, and made the playoffs, falling in the divisional round to the Cleveland Browns. Then in 1990, everything really started to come together for Buffalo. The Bills set a franchise record for wins as they went 13-3 and won the AFC East again, this time by 1 game over the Dolphins. Some successful drafts and great signings and trades had really started to make their marks. Future Hall of Famers Bruce Smith and Andre Reed, drafted in 1985, Thurman Thomas in 1988, and of course Jim Kelly, who was picked in the famous 1983 draft, finally joined the team in 1986 after the USFL. The 83 draft also brought in linebacker Darryl Talley. We'll get to see him a little bit later. Other key members drafted along the way were quarterback Frank Reich in 1985 and tackle Will Wolford in 1986. The 87 draft brought along linebacker Shane Conlon, cornerback Nate Odoms, fullback Jamie Mueller, defensive end Leon Seals, tight end Keith McKellar, and tackle Howard Ballard. In 1988, along with Thurman Thomas, the Bills selected nose tackle Jeff Wright, linebacker Carlton Bailey, who were 2 more key role players. Receiver Don Beebe was drafted in 1989, and the 1990 draft brought in defensive back James Williams, fullback Carwell Gardner, guard Glenn Parker, and linebacker Marv Patton. And before all of this, longtime guard Jim Richer was selected all the way back in 1980. Future Hall of Fame receiver James Lofton joined the Bills in 1989 after spending 2 years with the Raiders and enjoyed a career renaissance in Buffalo. Some of it really kind of making you think back to his years in Green Bay. Speaking of another Packer, running back Kenneth Davis came over from Green Bay in 1989 and really ended up playing a major role in the conference championship win over the Raiders. Special teams ace Steve Tasker claimed off waivers from the Oilers in 1987. Linebacker Cornelius Bennett was picked up in a trade in 1987 with the Colts. Interception leader Kirby Jackson was signed in 1988. Former Cardinals first-round strong safety Leonard Smith also joined the Bills in 88. Undrafted free agents Ray Bentley at linebacker and center Kent Hull, along with free safety Mark Kelso, all donned their Buffalo uniforms in 1986. And starting right guard John Davis was picked up from the Oilers before the 1989 season. Quite the collection. Buffalo rolled through the 1990 season with the number one scoring offense, pouring in 428 points, and the sixth-ranked scoring defense. There were 9 wins by more than 10 points, including a 38-24 victory over the Raiders in Week 5. 10 players were named to the Pro Bowl. The Bills advanced to the AFC Championship game after winning a 44-34 shootout over the Dolphins in the divisional round. Both teams racked up over 400 yards of offense. Kelly and Marino both had over 300 yards passing. And get this, Marino even had a 2-yard rushing touchdown. How about that? Not something you saw too often. But he did also throw 2 picks. The Buffalo Bills were finally moving on to a championship game for the first time since 1966, when the Bills lost to the Kansas City Chiefs and missed out on going to the first Super Bowl. Things were beginning to look pretty good for Buffalo. Over on the other side, the Los Angeles Raiders were a dominant franchise, no matter which city they were in, Oakland or LA, from the late 60s through the mid-80s. In 1985, the Raiders went 12-4, but lost in the divisional round. Over the next 4 years, Al Davis's franchise failed to reach the playoffs. And of course, Davis trying to figure out how to get back to the top. In 1989, though, Art Shell was named the head coach after the 4th game of the season, as Mike Shanahan had been fired. And of course, we all know what Mike Shanahan went on to do with the Broncos. Shell was a Hall of Fame tackle that helped bulldoze the way for some of the greatest seasons in franchise history for the Raiders, from 1968 through 1982. Shell also became the first African-American head coach since Hall of Fame coach and player Fritz Pollard all the way back in the 1920s. Now, after that 1-3 start in 1989, Shanahan got fired. Shell then took over and led the Raiders to a 7-5 finish, ending the year at 8-8. But they still missed the playoffs. But things were looking good, though. Shell was brought back in 1990, and this time the Raiders went 12-4, won the AFC West by 1 game over the Chiefs, and returned to the playoffs for the first time since its last division win in 1985. LA began the year 4-0 and ended the season winning its last 5 games. Now, the Raiders' offense finished 13th in the league in scoring and 7th in scoring defense. Now, this was a roster that was an interesting collection of veterans brought in from other teams along with a few key draft picks. Hall of Famers Howie Long, picked in 1981, Marcus Allen in 82, and Tim Brown in 88 were the draft highlights. Although Brown did not have a major impact that season as he was still recovering from a major injury the year before. Allen had also been relegated to a backup role and sometimes fullback role as well, as he shared the backfield with all-everything athlete Bo Jackson. Allen, however, was still the king of short yardage plunges into the end zone. He scored 12 rushing touchdowns in 1990, with 11 coming from 5 yards or less and 4 one-yard touchdowns. In fact, Marcus Allen ended his career with the most one-yard rushing TDs of all time with 56. John Riggins is second with 52. However, if you do include the playoffs, Riggins is still the all-time leader, as that number bumps up to 59. Allen had just 1 one-yard TD in the playoffs. But back to the 1990 Raiders. Bo Jackson was drafted in 1987 by LA Raiders after the mix-up in 86 where Tampa Bay tried to take him number 1, and he said, that whole story, not coming. So Jackson in 1990, he averaged 5.6 yards per carry. And more on Jackson in a moment. But the recent drafts through the 80s had not garnered too many other key players for LA. The 1983 draft did bring in center Don Mosbar, defensive end Greg Townsend, and receiver Mervin Fernandez. Defensive lineman Bill Pickell was also taken that year, but injuries had slowed him down by 1990 with just 3 starts and only 1.5 sacks. 1984 saw the Raiders draft pass rushing threat Sean Jones. However, Jones was in Houston by 1988. Out of 16 picks in 1985, only 4 players made it to the 1990 season. None of them were still with the Raiders. The 1986 draft lacked impact other than running back Napoleon McCallum, who ran for over 500 yards as a rookie. But due to his duties in the Navy and a transfer to a different ship, McCallum missed out on the next 3 years. He was back with the Raiders in 1990 after finishing his naval duties, but was way down the depth chart. Now, along with Bo Jackson, the 1987 draft did bring in fellow running back Steve Smith and tackle Bruce Wilkerson, as well as quarterback Steve Berline and guard John Giesick. However, those last two made their names with different teams. The 1988 draft was a little better, with Tim Brown coming in, then quarterback Terry McDaniel, who had some great years as a 5-time Pro Bowler from 1992 through 96, as well as picking up key role player defensive tackle Scott Davis. Because of past trades, the Raiders did not have a pick in 1990 until the 6th round. Out of the 5 total picks, running back Derek Gaynor played the most games with 34 going through the 1993 season. However, none of those games were played for the Raiders. The 1990 draft brought in defensive end Anthony Smith and linebacker Aaron Wallace. However, when you look at the rest of the roster, you see the collection from the rest of the league, something that Al Davis had been very famous for. Quarterback Jay Schrader came to the Raiders in 1988 after 3 years in Washington and losing his job to Super Bowl 22 MVP Doug Williams. Running back Greg Bell was on his 3rd team with the Raiders in 1990. He ran for over 1,100 yards as a rookie with the Bills in 1984, but was traded to the Rams in 87 as part of the 3-team deal that allowed Buffalo to land Cornelius Bennett, and of course Eric Dickerson also went from the Rams to the Colts. Bell had 2 exceptional years with the Rams in 1988 and 89, rushing for over 2,300 yards and scoring 31 rushing touchdowns over that span. He played just 6 games with the Raiders in 1990, which proved to be his final season. Speed demon receiver Willie Gault was signed in 1988 after 5 years in Chicago. Tight end Ethan Horton was signed off the street in 1987 and began to make an impact in the passing game in 1990, then made the Pro Bowl in 1991. Kick returners Jamie Holland and Ron Brown were 2 Blazers signed from other teams in Cali, as Holland was a Charger and Brown was playing for the Rams. Al Davis loved speed. Along the offensive line, left tackle Rory Graves was a rookie free agent signed in 1988. Pro Bowl left guard Steve Wisniewski was originally drafted by the Cowboys in 1989, but then Dallas traded his rights to the Raiders during the draft, so he never did suit up with the star on his helmet. Longtime veteran Max Montoya at right guard joined LA in 1990 after 11 years in Cincinnati. He did go to the Super Bowl twice, losing to the 49ers both times. And right tackle Steve Wright had already played for Dallas and Indy by the time he moved to LA in 1987. And even on special teams, kicker Jeff Jager originally played for the Browns and went to LA in 1989. Punter Jeff Gossett had been with 3 teams and 1 in the USFL before he found a home with the Raiders. And then on defense, you had free safety Eddie Anderson from the Seahawks, cornerback Lionel Washington from the Cardinals, defensive tackle Bob Golick from the Browns, strong safety Mike Harden from the Broncos, and middle linebacker Ricky Ellison was a 49er. Well, after winning the final 5 games of the regular season to claim the West, the Raiders defeated the Cincinnati Bengals in the divisional round 20-10, what ended up being a very costly game for LA. Bo Jackson was injured while trying to break out of a tackle from linebacker Kevin Walker. So January 13th, 1991 ended up being the last football game for arguably the greatest athlete of all time. And when you see what happened in the AFC title game, it does make you wonder if things would have been a little different if Jackson was there and healthy. Remember, that man was a loaded tackle, and not just big, but fast. Well, so on to January 20th. The Bills and Raiders met on a cold day at Rich Stadium in Buffalo for the right to go to Super Bowl 25. It was 39 degrees and a wind chill in the 20s. So, of course, there have been games colder, but, hey, once it gets to be It's just cold. It's just cold. It doesn't matter. The home team got it started early as Jim Kelly found James Lofton for a 13-yard touchdown in the first. It wouldn't be the last time that Lofton found the end zone. The Raiders responded with a drive that stalled out, but Jeff Jager came out and hit a 41-yard field goal to bring the score to 7-3. That kick proved to be the final points of the day for the Raiders. Kelly and the no-huddle offense came right back. Thurman Thomas capped off the drive, breaking through a huge hole in the line for a 12-yard score. The draw caught the LA defense off guard as everyone on that defensive line was trying to push forward on Kelly. By that point, also, the linebackers were a little bit too far off to the other side. The Bills now led 14-3, and the rout was on. Darryl Talley put an exclamation point on the first quarter with a pick six right in front of Tim Brown from inside the 30, and then beating Brown to the end zone. Now, granted, he did have a little bit of a head start on Brown, but still showed that speed that he had at his linebacker position. The second quarter belonged to Kenneth Davis. The former Packer scored from 1 yard out and then again from 3 yards away to put Buffalo up 34-3. Lofton scored his second touchdown of the game in the second quarter as well on a quick 8-yarder from Kelly. Lionel Washington, look at this. He tried to force the old wily vet to go to the outside, but Lofton gave a quick swipe of that left arm and shoved Washington out of the way. The Bills led 41-3 at the half and set a record for first half scoring in NFL playoff history. Now, things slowed down a little bit in the second half, as believe it or not, the Bills did not score at all in the third quarter. However, on the very first play of the fourth, Kenneth Davis followed fullback Jamie Mueller over the right guard and scored his third touchdown of the game. Now, Davis scored only 4 rushing touchdowns and 5 times total all season long. The Temple Tornado, as Davis was known, did have one more 3-score game in his career, coming in the regular season against the Dolphins in 1993. Now, the 1-yard run from Davis there at the beginning of the fourth quarter also broke the old conference championship game scoring record of 45 set by the Miami Dolphins in a 45-28 win over the Steelers on January 6, 1985. That allowed Miami to advance to Super Bowl 19, where they lost to the 49ers. The final score came on a Scott Norwood field goal from 39 yards away to put the Bills over 50. Buffalo piled up 502 yards of offense. Kelly finished with 300 on the dot, and the team ran for 202 yards. Thomas led with 138, and Davis gained only 21 yards, but of course he did have those 3 scores. The defense forced 7 turnovers with 5 interceptions of Jay Schrader. Backup QB Vince Evans came in late, and he did end up throwing another pick, so 6 interceptions total. Talley finished with 2 of those INTs, while Ray Bentley, Mark Kelso, Nate Odoms, and Leonard Smith snagged the others. Now, following the explosive victory, the Bills made it to the Super Bowl for the first time. However, the New York Giants had an incredible game plan that stifled the Bills' offense, as, of course, we all unfortunately know that Norwood ended up missing a long-distance field goal at the end of the game. The New York Football Giants were victorious for its second Lombardi Trophy. Now, Buffalo did return to the big game the next 3 seasons. No one has ever gone to the Super Bowl 4 straight times before or since. However, the Bills are still searching for that first Lombardi. And if you haven't seen it yet, take some time to watch the 30 for 30 on ESPN Plus called The 4 Falls of Buffalo. It's an absolutely incredible documentary. I know I will always remember Marv Levy's mantra of,
all you ever asked for is an opportunity. You got it today. Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?
I use that quote all the time when making weekly pump-up videos for the Marshall softball team from 2019 through 2022. Ended each video with that quote. Now here's an extra note for you on high-scoring conference title games. Teams have put up at least 40 points just 10 times. And of those 10 teams, only 3 went on to win the Super Bowl. Washington in 1991 beat the Lions 41-10, and then went on to defeat the Bills in Super Bowl 26. Remember, that was the second straight trip for Buffalo. The 2004 New England Patriots beat the Steelers 41-27 before taking down the Eagles in Super Bowl 39. And finally, the 2014 Patriots defeated the Colts 45-7 before beating the Seahawks in Super Bowl 49. The other 7 teams that were able to put up at least 40 points or more in a conference title game: the 2015 Panthers, 1984 Dolphins, 2016 Falcons, 2002 Raiders, 2000 Giants, and the 1967 Raiders, along with the 1990 Bills, all fell in the Super Bowl. The Carolina Panthers, following that 2015 season, they have come the closest to that points record with a 49-15 win over the Cardinals to move on to Super Bowl 50, where the Panthers ended up losing to the Denver Broncos. Now, okay, everyone, I know, long show this time with a ton of information, but just want to also let you know I will be starting a Halls of History podcast, so be on the lookout for that. Also, stay tuned, as after the Super Bowl this Sunday, I will be back on here with some shorts to look at the MVP of each of the 57 Super Bowls. That's right. It's a whole lot of MVPs, but a whole lot of great performances from great games. You can also check out some of my other videos from right here in the Halls of History. So thank you for watching, everyone, and enjoy Super Bowl Sunday between the Eagles and the Chiefs. Look, I'm just hoping it's a great game. It's always a little bit of a bummer when one team just absolutely dominates the other one. Unless, of course, that is your favorite team that does the dominating.